Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Sean Pond, Montrose County Commissioner for District 3 and leader of the Halt the Dolores initiative. Well, Commissioner Pond, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
I am, and thank you very much for having me on.
Well, Commissioner, you've become a leading voice for protecting Colorado land, specifically your efforts to stop the Dolores River from being designated a national monument. And recently, you've been an outspoken advocate for halting the Gunnison Outdoor Resource Protection Act, otherwise known as GORP. So can you start by telling us about GORP, the GORP Act? What would it mean for Coloradans who call Western Colorado home?
Yeah, absolutely. So the GORP Act is an introduced piece of legislation sponsored by Senator Michael Bennet, Senator John Hickenlooper, and surprisingly Congressman Jeff Hurd. And this is actually in the halls of Congress as we speak. It's a piece of legislation introduced, so it's a true threat. It encompasses a very large area, about 720,000 acres, in Delta, Gunnison, parts of Pitkin, Hinsdale, and Uray counties. So it ironically stops at the Montrose County line, which I thought was kind of funny. But it has effects to Montrose County directly. Our uh, financial well-being would be definitely impeded. There's some big negatives that I could talk about, but it affects everybody in the country, not just the people in Western Colorado. This is federal land. So somebody, say in New Jersey, wanted to come out here to the Gunnison Basin and go to, say, Taylor Reservoir, and that land now becomes locked up with wilderness designation, which means no human interaction. That affects everybody. So when we're talking about public lands anywhere in the West, it affects all Americans across this country, and people should be aware of that.
Well, definitely public lands has been in the news recently, and it's been really interesting to see just how outspoken people have become in trying to protect our public lands or protecting land for recreation, for hunting, for use by the people who live there. So what would the GORP Act do specifically to recreation, hunting, fishing, camping?
And this is a little bit of a broader answer because it's a big question. In things like the Dolores National Monument proposal, where it had monument designations, I could speak very directly to the history of monument designations. So that was an easier question to answer. The GORP isn't an all-inclusive um, federal overreach with designations. It has different and multiple layers, up to and including the most restrictive, which is wilderness designations. So about 70,000 acres, and don't quote me on that, is slotted for wilderness designations, which means roadless. Sometimes in wilderness designations, it doesn't even allow a bicycle or a foot traffic. They could actually, some places, as an example, there's a national conservation area that has a wilderness spotted here in Western Colorado that it says in there before ranchers can run their cattle in there or ride their horses, they have to decontaminate their hooves, which is ridiculous, right? So the GORP Act has so many different layers of wilderness study areas. There's some interesting parts of this. There's an 18,000 acre piece of land currently owned by the Ute tribe, and the Ute tribe has came out in support of GORP, and I'll explain to you why. It's a pretty smart move on them. They actually, in the GORP Act, you can read it online. They're going to take that 18,000 acres out of the Ute people's name, which removes it from the tax roll to the tune of about $225,000 annually to Gunnison County, and puts it into a federal trust, which is interesting, right? So on those Ute folks, smart move on you, on the Gunnison County commissioners. Why are they so easy to accept that depreciation or that removal of their county budget, which affects school districts and fire districts? And there's a whole list of things on my social media page that, but that one piece of land being moved from the tax roll into the federal hand, into a federal trust, it's pretty interesting.
That is interesting for sure. And, I was kind of surprised, as you mentioned, that there are so many people who are kind of supporting the GORP Act, people who I would think would know better, because in my mind, at least, the idea would be to keep control of this land at the local level, right? Where the counties can kind of make their own decisions. The local communities can use the property or use this land, use this property, as opposed to giving it to the federal government, who can really take that power away from the locals. Can you talk a little bit about why maybe some people are supporting this?
I'll give you my opinions, and they're just my opinions, but they're based upon a lot of research and being active in the public land advocacy world for a while. Sometimes the people that are supporting this get the title of the locals when they're not truly the locals. So if you look at some of the even the commissioners in these counties, most of them aren't ranchers. Most of them aren't in the mining industry. They're not in the timber or logging industry. Most of these folks are from Washington, Oregon, the Front Range. They're the loud people. They come in, they step up, and they get appointed or elected into some of these positions. But they don't necessarily speak for the industries, the individuals, and the legacy families that make a living off of this land, the people that built this state. And those people, honestly, and it's a problem in Colorado, are too busy working. They're out there, tending their field, they're raising children, trying to pay taxes, trying to survive here in rural Western Colorado. So the voices that speak up and support usually have the backing of the environmental lobby. They've got a lot of funding behind them. And I'm not going to rule out a little quid pro quo here too. Sometimes there are deals made, backroom deals, and maybe even some threats. Um, sometimes things happen. In this world we live in now, if you look at Hickenlooper and Bennet specifically, they've paved the road to if you want to seat at the table, you better play to get along, right? So there are those things that happen in the real world of politics, and it's a dark and dirty place.
Well said, sir. Yeah, definitely a dark and dirty place for sure. And nothing I don't think would surprise me and probably most people watching this anymore in terms of backroom deals and really trying to do things that don't necessarily help the local communities, but really support this different agenda that most people aren't aware of, whether it's this extreme environmentalists, as we've seen with Colorado's governor appointing some of these radical types to Parks and Wildlife and other attempts by, and of course anything with Bennett and Hickenlooper on it. Yeah, you can't trust that for a second for sure.
If it's there's a very common factual here since about 2004. The names Bennett, Hickenlooper, and Polis show up all across the board. And I would tell people, if you're watching me, you introduced me as a county commissioner, and I am. I've only been there for 5 months, but I'll tell you quite honestly, I'm not a politician because I can't stand most of them. The things that happen in this state make me sick to my stomach. And if you look at the progressive takeover of Colorado, when we're talking about public land issues, we're talking about one small percentage of what's really happening. The battle for the future of Colorado is real, and there needs to be more of us on the front lines of that, drawing a line in the sand and saying not anymore.
Wonderful. Well, I definitely encourage people to read some of your articles in the Rocky Mountain Voice. I do want to read this little passage here because I thought it really summed up so much of what's going on with this fight. But you said, quote, "This is the playbook. They take our land, lock it up, and then rebrand our towns as tourist attractions. And the only jobs left are seasonal, minimum wage tourist work. No industry, no opportunity, no future. Just a scenic backdrop for people who don't live here to take pictures." Can you kind of elaborate on that some more?
Yeah, I'll try to, and not. Sometimes when I talk about these things, I get some eye rolls, like we're talking about conspiracy theories. But if you look at the environmental groups, which are very well funded, dark money funded, if you look at the Joe Biden's 30 by 30 initiative, it's still playing out even though he's not there right now. This has gone on for many, many years. And rewilding the West is real. Rural cleansing is real. If you look at the fact they're trying to cover our agricultural land in solar panels and these large scale, I call them a threat. Now they're not solar. I hate when people use the word solar farms. They don't farm anything. If you look at road closures, if you look at everything from national conservation areas, national monuments, and all of the federal pieces of land that are taken from the American people, it all aims into one point. They don't want us here. They don't want rural Western folks living on the land. They're anti-agriculture. They're anti-beef. The war on beef is very, very real. The energy. If you look at the state of Colorado, how those three individuals we've already talked about have literally gutted the oil and gas industry. Coal mines shut down. Coal power plants shut down. And those three industries right there, that's the backbone. Was the backbone of Colorado's financial future, and they've decimated it. Now we have a $1.2 billion deficit in the state of Colorado, thanks to Jared Polis, John Hickenlooper, and Michael Bennet. This is real, and they want to replace that with solar panels covering most of our beautiful landscapes, taking up our view sheds, replacing this with tourists coming in. Tourism is a great it's a great industry, and I believe we need a little bit of all of it to survive in the future. We can't replace oil and gas with solar panels. It's just not going to happen. All of those industries they've curtailed created jobs. All of those jobs create taxes. Taxes pave roads. They take care of people. It's a very strange place that we find ourselves in Colorado right now. People really need to wake up and see what's looking around. This isn't a time to be quiet and sit in the dark.
Oh, 100%. I completely agree. I mean, this is definitely the time to fight. We can't sit back and let these things happen. And I think that's one of the more powerful messages is that there's opportunity to push back. There's opportunity to speak up. These people are elected representatives of the people and they can be elected out of office or replaced. So I think there's a lot of what do you suggest then? I mean, I know you have the petition up on change.org and definitely being a vocal, outspoken critic of the GORP Act, but what can people do?
I'm going to be very honest and very blunt, and you'll as we get to know each other in the future, you'll understand that about me. I'm not afraid to say things that other people are. It's time for the uninvolved to get involved. The people that are out there minding their own business that have fallen for the programming of the unaffiliated middle of the road voter is the safe place to be. What they've done in the state of Colorado is they've labeled you a bigot if you stand on the right side of the fence, and you're a liberal if you're on the other side. So that the 48% majority voting bloc in Colorado are those people that don't want to be labeled as anything. They feel it's noble to stand in the middle. And my message to them would be: you need to take a hard look. You're either on the side of tyranny or on the side of freedom. There's only two sides of this. So, one of the articles in the Rocky Mountain Voice, they titled was "Drawing a Line in the Sand," and I'll say quite boldly, I believe that Montrose County is one of, if not the only county in Western Colorado that still has a conservative majority of the board. And they're coming after Montrose hard. We're watching the blueprint play out in real time right here, right now. It happens to us every day. So the uninvolved, the unaffiliated voter, you really need to look at the Constitution, look at freedom, look at liberty. What are you leaving for future generations? I believe personally that this next upcoming election in 2026, this is going to be a deciding moment in Colorado's future. And I'll explain that a little bit. But we've got, obviously, Jared Polis is termed out, and you've got Senator Michael Bennet running for the governor's house, right? Can you imagine? This is the old guard. This is the people that have disassembled Colorado as I grew up in, right? And people aren't talking about this one, but we talk about Bennet, Hickenlooper, and Polis. Hickenlooper's up for reelection. No one's challenged him yet. We need to find a true conservative. I won't even say conservative, a true American, a constitutionalist, somebody that understands what's to be lost to challenge that man. If we allow those same three people to continue on, I believe we can never get Colorado back. 2026 is the line in the sand, in my personal opinion, where we either start to take some back, we start to flip some of those seats in the House, in the Senate. I don't know if we can keep Bennett out of the governor's mansion, but we should try. And I really think we can keep Hickenlooper out of the Senate seat. And if those three people right there aren't hand in hand, lockstep, trying to take away our public lands, trying to shut down industries that feed our families, trying to move us off the western parts of Colorado into the inner cities, this is where the people can really make a difference. So I would answer your question by saying this: don't try to help me, stand up and help yourself.
Well said, definitely. I think the 2026 election is extremely important. And I really encourage people to start getting involved now, right? I mean, it seems so far away, but really the groundwork has to be laid now with organizing in your community, finding other people who are willing to volunteer and support candidates for office. Build up a community, just build up the community that you have of people who believe in liberty and freedom or constitutional values, host barbecues and garage sales and get together with people and start developing it. Because like you said, we can't necessarily rely on anybody else to help somebody else or to help us, right? So we really have to do it ourselves. Ultimately, it's up to us in our own communities, in our own districts, and taking responsibility for our state house seats, our state senate seats, and of course the senate seat across the whole state.
Absolutely. I can make this one solemn promise. No one's coming to save you. If we don't stand up as Americans always have, we're going to lose what's left of this state. We'll become just another part of California. It's you've watched it play out. There's not many of us left stand to fight, and we need more of us, right? So, on that, if you read that article in Rocky Mountain Voice, some of us here in Montrose, Colorado, we have declared a freedom rally in 2026. It'll be June 20th, 2026 in Montrose, Colorado. And the citizens group has reserved Cerise Park, so we can accommodate up to 10,000 people. And we've got sponsors. We're trying to get some big names in here. Kid Rock's on the talking list, right? So some of these folks coming in, I wouldn't be surprised to see, Donald Trump Jr. or Eric Trump coming in. And I'm saying that because this needs to be a momentous moment in drawing a line in the sand, right? We need to make sure people understand that we're losing this fight because of the uninvolved, the unaffiliated. It's time to pick a side on this thing and decide the future of Colorado, and that's all on us. So you can put that one on your calendar. There's going to be a lot of big names there, some good folks there, and we did it intentionally right at the end of the primaries. So all of these candidates running for governor, there are 16 right now, they all have a stage and a microphone. This is where you can be to understand and meet these people to figure out what they plan is, what's their vision for Colorado. And for me personally, I guess I'm just going to again be honest and blunt, but be wary of the candidate that talks about being bipartisan, reaching across the aisle, right? Wanting a seat at the table. Because those individuals, if they're already agreeing to sit at the table, they're not compromising, they're not negotiating, they're surrendering. You got to choose what side of freedom you stand on.
Yeah, I really enjoyed in that article, which I'll of course have links at Free State Colorado. You said, quote, "We talk a lot about compromise in politics, how it's noble, how it's necessary, but I'll say what no one else will. Compromise is how liberty dies. The biggest threat to this republic isn't the radical left, it's the moderate politician who always wants a seat at the table, even when that table is carving up the Constitution." And I think that is so well said. And I think that's so important because I've met so many people who've become kind of maybe disaffected over the years, who've kind of stepped away from the Republican Party or just not even the party itself, but just getting involved in politics because they're so disappointed when they work hard or donate to a candidate and they get elected, and then they see them compromising their rights away. And it says, well, why even try? Why even fight? So I think the call for more leadership, more people getting involved and standing up and speaking out, I think that's really what we need here in Colorado.
It's what we have to have here in Colorado. If we don't find people that will simply stand up and fight for liberty, that understand the Constitution doesn't give us anything, it literally protects the government that we created from becoming so large that they rule over the people they were intended to serve. That's the basis of this. And not just in Colorado, but across this country. But Colorado is, again, we're at a turning point. We've watched a downhill slide since 2008 to now. There's not much of the Colorado I grew up in left. Now's the time. If anybody's watching this, share this. Talk to people out there. Make sure you understand who you're getting behind. Your vote does matter. I hear that so often that why even vote? It doesn't matter. I promise you it does. And there's lots of misinformation out there. And I'm not going to go down the voting integrity and Dominion machines. There's a whole kind of conspiracy theories there. But if people don't vote, they don't have a voice. And your voice matters. Now is the time to stand up and show them how much it matters.
100%. Couldn't agree more. And I just want to really emphasize for people how horrible the GORP Act would be for Colorado, because even though this is an issue that affects so much of the Western Slope, as you said at the beginning, it really affects issues like this affect all Americans and all Coloradans, really. So we have people out here more in the Front Range, that really need to be aware of this. And in my mind, need to be reaching out to the lawmakers at the Senate and congressional level and tell them why the GORP Act is so bad. A lot of these people, they need that education and they really need to hear from the public. I've seen it over the years that, congressmen, senators, they don't really care one way or the other until the electorate starts really getting upset about it and it becomes an issue. And that can become really important. But just reading real briefly here from your change.org petition, you say the GORP Act would strip away oil and gas development, critical mineral extraction, and timber harvesting, crippling local economies that rely on resource development to survive. It would eliminate grazing allocations and damage longstanding ranching operations that are already heavily regulated. It would threaten downstream water rights, endangering agriculture, food supply, and rural infrastructure in areas that already suffer from mismanagement and overreach. It would impose federal land designations without true local input or consent, permanently restricting hunting, fishing, ATV access, camping, and other forms of responsible recreation. It would increase the risk of wildfires by blocking active forest management and limiting emergency mitigation efforts. So couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that's really so important. I keep seeing, with this whole public lands debate at the federal level, so many people are coming out and saying, I just love this land here that we have that where we can go out and go fishing, go camping, enjoy it, and really have this local control of it. I think that's so important. That's a piece of it that we can't neglect. But of course, the jobs, like you said, we can't really allow them to get rid of the rural communities. I mean, it's wild and it does sound a little strange, I think, for most people who haven't been paying attention, but I'm confident that there's more people paying attention than ever who understand this agenda to really go after the rural lifestyle, to force people into cities and really take away our rights to live off the land or our ability to live off the land. And if they destroy those businesses, destroy the ability to mine, to graze cattle, to harvest timber, to extract minerals, then yeah, I mean, then we're at the mercy of these big corporations and these other foreign actors and everybody else out there instead of actually having control of these things in our own communities.
Yeah, very well said. So I'll talk about some very specific numbers on some of the industries we're talking about. So we had the Montrose Economic Development Corporation actually came in and talked to me, sent some emails, and talked about one of the industries in Montrose, Colorado, which again, the GORP Act isn't in Montrose County, but here's how it can affect us. And most people don't realize that Montrose County has the largest timber mill in the state of Colorado, and it receives timber from all over Western Colorado. It employs about 250 people directly. So when you look at it, and then the indirect employment, like the people out in the field actually cutting trees, the truckers, the people that are moving this thing, it can affect up to about 400 employees in Montrose County and surrounding counties. So we went through the numbers. They came in and said currently, because of all of the regulations in place, they're only operating at about 50% capacity. And if the GORP Act were to pass, it would shut that sawmill down. We talked about the amount of money they built to put in the mill, the infrastructure improvements, the revenue lost to Montrose County is $800,000 annually. We're talking about a $70 million loss if the GORP Act passes, and hundreds of people out of job, and all of their families, in struggling. So that's one industry that the GORP Act will affect. And then we could go into a bunch of others. One of the most important, I think, overlooked is water. Any type of you have one of these pop-up designations, no matter what they title it as, it's always on a waterway. In this case, the Gunnison Basin is the largest water flow downstream from Montrose, Delta, and Mesa counties. Okay, and the GORP Act doesn't do anything. They're not going to just take your water away, but there's something called Federal Reserve water rights, and I would encourage your readers your viewers to Google it and see what it is. Federal Reserve water rights basically say they're a very, very simple definition that the federal government can choose to implement them for the needs of the area. So if they were to put this in, and I've read the entire GORP Act, it does not preclude Federal Reserve water rights. That would mean, so let's just say this passes. 10 years down the road, God forbid, Hickenlooper, Bennet, and Polish still around, but the federal government could literally enact Federal Reserve water rights trumping all senior water rights. And I'll just be extreme. They could actually pipeline that to the Front Range, to Boulder, to Denver areas. So it really, when you're giving the federal government more authority over the people's lands, industries, and lives, we never win, right? So wildfire mitigation, all of that water that we're talking about, when you shut down roads and access, we can't get in there to do wildfire mitigation. Wildfires out of control don't recognize county lines, by the way. They just go where they want to go, and they could be detrimental to water flows. All that ash, that sediment, and down timber runs right in. If you can't get equipment in there to clean up those water flows, it absolutely affects all of the people clear to the Colorado River. There are so many negatives that come out of this, other than just we want to protect it. So my statement to people when I hear these type of designations, including GORP, is it's already protected. It's already managed by the Bureau of Land Management or the Forest Service. It's not in danger. What do they want to protect it from?
To protect it from the people, I would think the people being able to use the land, to live off the land, to build a life off the land, which is of course our American way. That's just my 2 cents there. That they want to take that ability away from individuals and displace people and destroy this kind of rural lifestyle. That's that'd be my thought.
No, you're exactly right. If you look at this country as a whole, while we're here, why we're here, it's land. The founding fathers, the first people that set foot on this continent, it was all about land. It always has been. Fact, land and liberty are deeply intertwined. And if we lose one, we're surely going to lose the other. It's worth fighting for.
It's a fair point. Very fair. Now, you've been a big fighter against the GORP Act, and I really recommend people read any article that has your name on it because it's all good stuff out there. And if people who believe in liberty and freedom, you'll really enjoy what Commissioner Pond has to say. But can you give us a little bit of an update about this Dolores River National Monument designation? Because I know you've been fighting that fight for a while, and what's going on there?
Yeah, so that again was introduced by Senator Michael Bennet and John Hickenlooper. Those names are they're synonymous anytime you hear locking up federal land. So that became a threat last year sometime, and I again started a petition. And I was just a guy out here living. I live here. I live in the small town of Nucla, Colorado, which is where this 500,000 acre national monument was proposed. And that's the land that me and my family and my friends and everybody here we use that daily. We're out there in that country, so we stood up to protect it. We started a petition. We got railroaded by the environmental lobby. We were able to get Hickenlooper and Bennet both to this small town. The town of Nuclear, Colorado has a population of about 400 people, and we had 500 and 600 people show up to say no, keep your keep your paws off of our land and our life. So it was a battle. We really and truly thought that we were going to lose this land. We really did. Um, and we didn't know we'd actually, I can't say won the battle, but at least kept it at bay for now. The moment that Donald Trump was sworn in, because Joe Biden didn't use his magic pen and abuse the Antiquities Act of 1906 and just sign it away. So because people stood up, because we had a voice, we kept it off the table. Now I'm not saying they're not going to come back for it again. They absolutely will. I'll tell you a funny story. Actually, kind of ties in with that. So right after we knew that the national monument was a dead issue at the time, within, well, 2 days after President Trump was sworn in, we had a county commissioner from Montrose, Colorado, and a county commissioner from Mesa County, Colorado, that started a working group to propose a national conservation area along the same stretch of the river. I think it was 68,000 acres, and they call it the Dolores National Conservation Area in Montrose and Mesa County. So we didn't even have time to celebrate stopping the monument, and here I was fighting again this national conservation area. I was kind of blown away, like, come on. And that's how I ended up in the seat. It was kind of a, people have said it was a strange mix of I don't know, luck and divine intervention, but we had a county commissioner that ran in Montrose County, and he was a longtime sheriff here. His name is Rick Dunlop, great guy, friend of mine. He swore in, and he was the county commissioner for District 3, and he unfortunately passed away. He had a heart attack, and that left that seat open. And I received several hundred phone calls, and people asked me to throw my name in the hat for consideration. And I'll be honest, I didn't even know what throw my name in the hat meant. I just said, okay, how do I do that? And I did it for one reason. It wasn't because I'm a politician or I wanted to be involved in politics. I didn't want to know the things that I know now. And I just did it because we stopped the monument. And now here was this dadgum NCA staring me in the face. And I didn't know how to continue to battle this one because now I was fighting county commissioners. So I swore in on February 18th, which was a Tuesday. My next day, the first day in my seat on February 20th, 19th, I'm sorry, I proposed a resolution opposing the Dolores National Conservation Area to the Board of County Commissioners in Montrose, and it passed with a vote of 2-1. So we stopped the National Conservation Area. And that's how I got involved in politics. But where I'll tie this into the monument, when that NCA was being talked about, Senator Hickenlooper and Senator Bennet talked about releasing a broader land use package, including the GORP Act, the NCA in Montrose and Mesa counties, and the NCA in Dolores, San Miguel, and Montezuma counties. So when this broader land use package came out, it has the GORP Act and it has the NCA special management area in those southern counties. The only reason that Montrose and Mesa aren't in there is because I threw my name in a hat, and that's just the truth. So that's the kind of difference that people can make. I'm just a nobody from Nuclear, Colorado, nothing special about me. But I got tired of having my liberty stripped away. I worry about my 5 kids and my 7 grandkids. I worry about what kind of future we're leaving to the next generation. And it's either free or it's not. There's no middle ground in that. So all of these things tie into people need to wake up, get involved, get out of the chair, crawl off your tractor for half an hour, be involved. Be involved in local politics. Run for your school boards. Run for your chamber of commerce, your power co-op boards. Make sure that people that are getting elected to your county board of commissioners are the people that identify with you. Because if not, you're letting them become the voice of the locals. And that's how we're losing Colorado.
Wow. Yeah, powerful story. And yeah, just the power and the impact that a person can have. It's not easy necessarily, but it might be easier than some people think. It just, as you said, showing up is kind of that first step, right? Show up at your county commissioner meetings, your city council meetings, your school board meetings, get involved. I mean, really, I've said it before, but you show up to one city council meeting and you're better informed than 80% of the people in your community because now you know what they're doing and what development's coming in and what zoning and whose interest groups are pushing what agenda and this and that. So really that first step is just show up and encourage people to do so. And then, yeah, pick a seat and run or find somebody else to run and support them and we can win this. And I really truly believe that. Colorado is not lost. That's something I cringe at every time I see on social media when people say those things. But, you're proof of it out there on the Western slope. And I know there's a lot of opportunity here for individuals to stand up, to speak out, and to become leaders for liberty and really protecting our way of life here in Colorado. So really appreciate your time. Really appreciate talking to you. Very encouraging and definitely makes me feel a lot more hopeful and optimistic knowing that there's more people out there like you, sir, who are willing to step up and fight. So thank you for everything you're doing. Any final thoughts or any other places that people should be looking into or any links you'd like to share?
No, I think you shared the important ones up there, but I can't stress enough this election in 2026. If you and I have the same conversation in 2027, it might have a very different tone. If you look again, I keep saying this, Hickenlooper seat, that needs to be the focus of the people in the state of Colorado. That's where things, in my humble opinion, truly change. It's those three names have popped up in the last, well, since 2008 when Colorado started its political shift. Uh, it's so important that people understand you can't sit this one out. Decide where you stand, make your voices heard. This is our last chance, in my humble opinion.
Well, appreciate your time, sir. Hopefully, we'll be talking again soon. Please keep us updated on any news. But for now, take care and look forward to talking to you later.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me on. God bless.
Take care.